Okay, everyone, welcome to Anatomy and Physiology. I'm your instructor, Dr. Stephen Lindner. When you go into your course, you will see here the name of the course, BSc 2085 CG2 80208 2021. There's a few tabs here that you should get comfortable with. It is the announcements. If you haven't been receiving emails of announcements, then you can click on the announcement bar and you'll see all the announcements that were sent out. And you should absolutely go through them. Let me do my screen share. Give me 1 minute to catch my screen share because I know you guys are like, I don't see anything. So let's do, okay. So let's catch the screen share again. Hopefully you can all see my screen now. So here on the top left is the name of the course. Here's the announcements. Again, if you haven't been receiving my emails, because I do send out announcements and they should be emailed. Sometimes I just go direct email, so make sure you check your notifications. There's several messages, announcement messages that are made, and you should not skip over them. They are critical to your success in the course. So please make sure you go through them. I'll tell you what's there. One of them goes through how to register for Connect. I will discuss what Connect is, but Connect is where you'll be doing your lab learning and your lab quizzes. Under Connect, you will also, after you register for Connect, and these are the instructions as to how to do that, you will be able to access your textbook that comes in an ebook form. You'll get the APR, which is Anatomy and Physiology Revealed, and you'll be able to access the weekly quizzes that are here. And it pretty much looks like this. When you click on the APR, there'll be Lab Quiz 1, which you can do anytime this week. Next week, you can do Lab Quiz 2. The week after that, Lab Quiz 3. And then week 4, there's another quiz. And I'll show you how to prep for those and how to study for those. Then there is just, Dr. Lindner's tips to be successful in the course. So please take the time to read through these. Based on my experience in teaching this course, a lot of students lose silly points on the discussion board. There is a rubric that needs to be followed, and the discussion board is an amazing place where you, the student, get to learn, and you get to learn by reading your fellow classmates' work, and at the same time, you will be teaching a concept to your fellow classmates. So each week, there could be somewhere between 30 and 40 different topics, discussion forum topics, and you have to claim one each week. And you will see where to claim it on the discussion forum. You will claim the topic name and the topic number, and once you claim it, no one else can. There are no duplicates on these topics. Then, let's say student number 1 chooses the topic on the cell, and I do my research on it. I have my resources, my citation, and then I apply my critical thinking to that. Maybe how is this applicable somehow to my life? How is this applicable to healthcare? How is this applicable to my specialty or field that I should be moving, that I'm going to be learning and getting into? So those are the different parts that we look for in every discussion board post. Are you clearly labeling and using the proper APA format for your work? And let's say I do my work, and then now student number 2 reads my work. Student number 2 can add additional information to my work, or can simply post something a little bit controversial in relationship to it. Maybe it stirred up some thought. Dr. Lindner, I found your posts on the cell quite interesting. And you describe the mitochondria very well in terms of energy production. And you described that it looked very similar and had similar components to bacteria. Well, it made me wonder, if that's the case, could the use of antibiotics, which kill bacteria, somehow harm the mitochondria? So I did some research, and here's what I discovered, right? So that is great critical thinking, and there's research to back it up. So that's how amazing the discussion board is. So you are required each week to do one discussion board post, which is like teaching the topic, and then you're reading your other classmates' answers and work, and you have to do two other editions. And each post that you do has to be labeled research with your research portion, and then your critical thinking bolded and underlined with your critical thinking component. Okay, so I'll go into that in a little bit more detail, but just wanted to point out a little bit about the discussion forum or the discussion board and how it's run, because that's something that we do every single week. And then you see the APR, which is, I'll go through that in a second, showing you the lab and the assignments. So read through Lindner's tips. Here are some examples of posts that were done. You see there's a research part, and then there's a critical thinking part. And then you can see the references down here at the bottom. I just gave many of them. You can see the footnotes. You see how there are footnotes here, and then at the bottom, they have them numbered. So this is how your work will look. Always a research portion and always a critical thinking portion, whether it's your answer and your main discussion or whether they are your two other replies. Okay, so read through the post I did on the discussion board. This happens to have the topics. It looks like there's 39 topics that you can choose from for week 1. It shows you a little bit of the critical thinking and what is critical thinking and the different responses. And then here's a little rubric on it, the rubric for your 3 posts to follow. And then I gave you, again, just a few examples below to follow. What other announcements did I post already? This one is on how to register for Connect. The Connect is your lab portion. What is it, right? So take the time to go through it. I don't have to do it here. There's announcements on it. Several of you are here this evening, which is nice because you probably saw my announcement or email, and I will send one of these out each week to you, getting us ready for the next Kaiser Live, which is always Monday nights at 9 p.m. Right? Meet your instructor. Hopefully you clicked on that and you read a little bit about me. You saw my introductory video down here. Here is the textbook, the required textbook, what it looks like by Saladin, Form and Function, Anatomy and Physiology. A little bit about me. If you didn't get an opportunity to read it, I've been in education for a long, long time, and I've been in healthcare for a really long time. I've been a doctor of chiropractic since 1996. I've been in solo practice. I started my own practice. I was 24 years old when I opened up and started, and absolutely love it to this day. I still practice. I'm just as excited to meet and greet new patients and help them recover. Some of them that are very sick to regain their health, and some of them that are well to stay well and to achieve even better optimum human performance. I also have, besides my doctorates, I also have a master's degree. I have an associate's, a bachelor's, a master's, and doctorate. So I kind of have the full chain there. But my master's is in human clinical nutrition, and I get to apply human nutrition and chiropractic together, which I absolutely love because it deals with biochemistry. And today, this evening, I'll talk about the organization of human life, how it starts at the chemical level, which is for us biochemicals, biochemistry. And when your biochemistry comes together, it creates cells. And then when cells come together, they make tissues. And tissues make organs, and organs make systems, and the systems make the organism. So I love applying both. And even at the chemical level, you will see through the readings that when you look at chemistry, whether it's carbohydrates and proteins and fats and nucleic acids, even though that's chemistry, they have form, they have structure, which is really neat. You can see like a group of long chains of carbons with hydrogens and single bonds and double bonds, and that is structure. And structure determines function, which is what anatomy and physiology is all about, form and function. So I love teaching the course and directing it. This course, the way it's designed, a large part of it is somewhat self-taught because you're the active participant in the process. I'm more of like a coach and a director for this course. I will always do some introductory stuff Monday night. And then through the discussion board, I read your posts and I thoroughly enjoy them, but I read them and then I'll leave you some relevant feedback to it. Not so much critiquing you publicly, but I may find some relevant information that relates to healthcare, and that's what I bring to the table. So everything that we put on the discussion forum or the discussion board relates to your futures, and that's really the best part of this course. And then I will leave you more personalized feedback in the gradebook every single week. I use a rubric, so if some of you don't get 100 and you get an 80 or 70 or 60, you can go through the rubric and see where the points were lost. Was it because your critical thinking lacked? Was it that you didn't post every other day? Because on the discussion forum, you're supposed to post on 3 separate days. You have to do 3 posts, and they shouldn't all be on the same day. So the way it makes sense to manage the discussion board would be, okay, today's Monday, I'm going to read someone's work, and then I'm going to think about it. And then Tuesday, I'm going to post something. And then Wednesday, I'm going to read more. And then Thursday, I'll post something. And then Friday, I'll read something. And then Saturday or Sunday, I'll post again. So that's, if it's done wisely, that's the way you should do it. You actually lose points if you do it all in one day, because part of the rubric is, was the post done on separate days than your other posts? Okay. All right, so that's a little bit about me there. So I've been teaching healthcare providers. That's really it. Everything in allied health science, anatomy and physiology. I've taught neurology, myology, kinesiology, orthopedics, trigger point therapy, any type of ology, pathophysiology. I also teach for a master's program at another university, also online, teaching a variety of ologies there. So most of you that are here at Kaiser, you're getting your start because you're going to be either nurse anesthesiology, you're going to be a registered nurse, you're going to be a respiratory therapist, physical therapy assistant, you want to get into dentistry, medicine, chiropractic. Gosh, there's so many different areas in healthcare that you can go. Dental hygienists, we've seen them all come through the program. So Kaiser is a great place to get your start. The online program is pretty fantastic because it still allows you to tend to your needs, to tend to your family, tend to your kids, your pets, work, and still advance with your education, right? Education shouldn't prevent you from living your life. You want to try and fit it in. That's the beauty of it. And I think we've done a pretty good job at Kaiser doing that. So here's a little bit of my teaching philosophy. Okay, now the syllabus you can go through. Here is getting started. That's where you're going to start. So here is the information about your course textbook. It is a bundle that's by Saladin, McGraw-Hill, Anatomy and Physiology, The Unity of Form and Function, 9th edition. Here's the ISBN. You want to order your books for the next term by week 3, okay? You really want to get this early on. You don't want to get this second week, third week, fourth week. It's done. It moves so fast, and you don't want to fall behind. Students feel stressed when they don't time manage. And some of you already in your introductory announcements that you've made introducing yourself have talked about your experiences taking other courses at Kaiser and online, and the key is really time management, and I agree. This course moves quick. There's a few moving parts every week, and if you save it for last minute, you're going to be overwhelmed. This course typically requires you to get up earlier in the morning, stay up later at night. That's kind of it. If you don't change anything else, right? If you're not quitting a job and you're not if you're not sacrificing anything, it's going to be hard to fit this in. So typically you're going to have to get up earlier and stay up later to get it done. And it is a sacrifice. That's what education really is about, making sacrifices. Then you got the course objectives. Everyone then is required to take the pre-test. If you haven't done it and it's moving close to the end of the week, Blackboard will send out an announcement that you haven't completed the pre-test. Now, the pre-test doesn't count. It's not going to work against you. It's basically an outcome measurement of saying, what do my students know coming into the course? Okay, and then at the very end, you're going to take a similar one to see what did you learn and how much do you know now? And then typically what we see is a nice increase in your knowledge base, which we would hope. Okay, so you want to make sure that the browser, you can use Chrome. You don't want to use Chromebooks. Chromebooks don't work for the exams, but Chrome works great. Okay. You want to, this is also a mandatory item, the course certification. That is mandatory before anything else is done. So please go through that. Here are some tech information, some emails and contact information should you need to reach anyone. Okay. If you have questions with Connect, you're not contacting these people. You're contacting McGraw-Hill. Okay. Course introductions. Here's access to our library. And let's see, once you go through that, I think it's going to take us to week 1. But you know what? I like this about critical thinking. I really want to make sure that you take an opportunity to kind of read this because, again, students lose points on this, on the critical thinking part. You know, critical thinking is taking something and looking at it differently than everyone else. Okay, in another class that I was teaching, I think we were covering HIV and AIDS, and the topic was about the CD4 count, CD4 cells, which is a type of T cell, part of your white blood cells. And with HIV, the CD4 count decreases. And students just didn't know how to apply critical thinking to that. And I said, don't complicate it. Just say, well, if CD4 cell count declining is bad and it's bad for your immune system, my thinking would say, I wonder what an individual could do on their own to try and increase the CD4 count. Is there something they can do exercise-wise, food-wise, with their thinking, with meditation, with different alternatives, with herbs, with acupuncture, with chiropractic? Is there something that could be done, right? That's a little bit of critical thinking, but not just asking the questions, coming up with answers to your own questions. That's critical thinking. Okay, so once you finish with the start here, that's when you're going to get into week 1. So on the left, there's week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. So let's start at week 1, show you what you'll find here. Here's the overview. After you've finished your certification and the course pretest, these are the chapters that are covered in the lecture portion, right? There's a lecture exam that's got around 24, 25 questions each week. And then there's a lab portion that's got somewhere between 40 and 45 pictures and questions from pictures and models every week. And those are 2 separate exams. The lecture uses Lockdown Browser, and the lab is going to use the Connect link. And I'll show you that. We'll walk you through it. Okay, so here's the Respondus Lockdown Browser. Make sure this is where you're going to be taking your tests. If you log in and it says it asks you for a passcode or a password, it means you're doing something wrong. It means you're not taking the exam through the Respondus Lockdown Browser. That's the only place an exam should be taken. So watch this short video on how to do that. You want to make sure that you complete your discussion boards every week. All the work is due by 11:59 Sunday night, Eastern Standard Time. All of your work needs to be due by that time. Whether it's your lecture exam, your lab quiz, or the discussion board, it's all has to be completed before that time. I'll show you in a second about the lab quiz, where you'll find that. The lab quizzes are found in Connect. It'll say McGraw-Hill Connect. You want to register by Tuesday, by tomorrow, for Connect. The APR stands for Anatomy and Physiology Revealed. I'll show you what that looks like. And in week 1, there's going to be a quiz. Then that quiz is going to cover body orientation, which I'll go over some of that with you today, this evening. And it'll cover some of the cell, a little bit of cell chemistry. And then Atlas A and B. Atlas A and B is in your textbook. So I just want to be clear about that. I'll show you where you can find this. Atlas A and Atlas B are in the Saladin book. And some students have difficulty finding the Atlas B because it falls right after Chapter 10, and a lot of students aren't looking that deep in it. Chapter A is in the beginning, the Atlas A is in the beginning, and Chapter B is after Chapter 10. But it's important because there's a lot of anatomical reference terminology that's there, and I'll show you where that is. Each week there's an optional extra credit that you can do. It is a weekly summary. There is a rubric for that as well that you need to follow. It's 4 separate paragraphs that you can do, and it could potentially have an impact on your grade of 2%. Okay, so it can raise you 2 points at the very end if you get 100 on all of them. Okay, you want to make sure you complete the pretest, the certification, and the late policy. You can go through that. There are no late submissions on the discussion board work. I may let something slide if there's some sort of crisis that a student has, and oh my gosh, and you give me a heads up in advance, then I could, on occasion, if it's a crisis situation, make an exception once a term if there's an issue. If there is a pattern that we see, obviously not, but a once in a blue moon type of thing, we can work with you. Okay. What else do we have? Now we go down to the lockdown monitor practice test. This is not graded. It just makes sure that your lockdown browser was set properly. So you want to do that. Here is the reading. You want to make sure you go through chapters 1 through 4, and these are the main topics covered for lecture. There are some supporting videos that you can see here. They're all short, somewhere between 1 minute to 3 minutes, that kind of support and go over some of the main themes that may be a little bit more difficult and challenging in those lectures. Under lessons and resources, if you want to download PowerPoints that come from these or the end of the chapter outlines, you can do that as well from here. Here is the McGraw-Hill Week 1 lab. I'm going to come back to this for a second. Underneath that is your Week 1 Respondus lockdown browser, where you're going to take your first exam. Okay, You do have plenty of time for that first lecture exam. It gives you an hour and 15 minutes. I think there's about 25 questions, so that is plenty of time, really, an incredible amount of time to take that exam. Okay, there are no codes for that, again, not if you're taking it through the lockdown browser. It should take you right through. Here's the weekly summary. This is the extra credit portion. So if you read through this, again, these are all done prior to 11:59 Eastern Standard Time. And again, it could move the needle on your final up to 2 points on your final average. So it could make a difference, right? I mean, it could move you from a 70, let's say your average is a 78.5. We don't round up, so a 78.5 is a C. But if you did them for all 4 weeks, now you're in an 80.5, which is a big. It does affect. But that being said, usually 3-4 students at best choose this option because they tend to do well enough with everything else. Okay, but there are some expectations and requirements for this assignment. Please read them carefully and make sure that you meet all of those portions. Okay, let me go back now to the McGraw-Hill. So when you click on that, again, McGraw-Hill Connect, this is for your lab. So you click on that, and again, what you see here is week 1, 2, 3, and 4. So for this week, we'll be covering body orientation, cells and chemistry, and then Atlas A and B. Now, tricky part, again, I want to point this out, Atlas A and B comes from the textbook portion or the ebook, not the lab, but the lecture portion. So this is one of the few times where you're going to see information from the lecture that can show up on the lab portion. And I put here Atlas B can be found after chapter 10. When you're in Connect, you're going to look for this little tab, and it's the cadaver dissection tool, but it says APR, Anatomy and Physiology. You click on this APR, I'll show you what you will see, but it'll take you to this, a place for you to see your quizzes. Okay, let's see if I can take a look at what that looks like. Let me jump into that and show you. Scroll down a bit. Here again is how to register for Connect. You'll definitely want to do that this evening. Use your name that's in the roster. Use your legal name, no nicknames. It has to connect, right? Because the grades are going from Connect into Blackboard. So if your name is, Caitlin, don't put Kate. Don't put Katie. It's got to be Caitlin. If it's Danielle or, don't put Dan, right? Put your legal registered name. So please just go through these. Also, students get jammed up on this, and I feel bad. I mean, each term, you get a 2-week free trial. So some students say, oh, I didn't get the book, and they go for the 2-week trial, and then it's week 3 and it expires, and they don't have access to week 3 and 4. And they end up spending $130, $140 anyway at the end, and they don't get it in time. So don't be one of those students. Be proactive. Don't wait. Don't try and take shortcuts, because the shortcuts will always jam you up in the end. So just be aware. They will give you, if you order it and you haven't received it, just know you have the 2-week trial as a buffer. And as long as you ordered it, it's coming, you're going to be fine. But I have some students last term that it ran out, and then she had to order it, and she ordered it and got it 3 days before the end of the class and didn't have enough time to complete it anyway. So it's, like I said, these things catch up. Here's the APR. I'm going to show you what it looks like. When you click on this and it launches, this will open up, which kind of looks like, let's see if I can do that. When you click on Connect, this is going to open up right away. And this is where you see your week 1 quiz, week 2, 3, and 4. But over here, you can see your ebook for your textbook, and then you see your APR. Okay, so when you click on the APR, this opens up. You're like, all right, what am I supposed to do here? All right, what is this about? So up here on the top, you can select modules. See that right there? So when you click on that, for today, for this week, it's body orientation, cells, and chemistry. So when you click on body orientation, we can select the topic and go, okay, let's look at body regions. See if I can go back here. And then on the left, okay, where's the abdominal cavity? Boom, it highlights it. Oh, how cool is that? Where is the axillary region? Boom, right there in the armpit. Okay, where's the brachial region? Okay, so you really want to go through all of these because you will see these on the lab portion. And you may see something like this that's highlighted, and it'll ask you what this is and give you a few choices. Where's the femoral region? Boom. Where's the gluteal? Okay, so we'll go through these. So make sure you cover body orientation and then cells and chemistry. The same thing. When you click on it, nothing shows up. But when you select the topic, you're going to go, okay, let me look at the generalized cell. All right, let's see where the free ribosomes are. Oh, that's neat. Where's the Golgi? Okay, that's the highlighted structure. Where's the lysosomes? The highlighted structure. Where is the microtubules? Okay, so click on all of these, go through them. You will see this on the lab exam again. So if you don't go through it, you're going to be like, oh my God, I didn't know that was going to be on there. So make sure you do 1 and 2, okay, for this week. All right, what else do you need to do there? I said for the first exam, you also had to click on Saladin and use Atlas A and B. So when you click on, let's do that. Let me go back. When you click on Saladin, and up here on the top left, that's your table of contents or the index, right? When you click on this, it's trying to load, so give it a second. There you go. So when we click on this, we can say, all right, here's chapter 1, here's chapter 2, 3, and 4. It's those 4 chapters that are on the lecture portion. Here's your Atlas A. You could say, all right, I need to learn about the planes. All right, planes, I have to know these. I got to know the frontal plane, the transverse plane, the sagittal plane. Okay, let's go back again. What else do I have to know in this atlas? Let me look at the body regions. Okay, make sure you go through these. I'm going to cover some of these tonight on the PowerPoint, but there's lots that will pop up on the lab that come from this. So make sure you feel comfortable with these regions. This is all Atlas A. Okay, let's go back. Close this. Scroll up to the top. Let's look at Atlas B. Where's Atlas B? I said that's after chapter 10. This is why a lot of students miss it. Here's chapter 10. There's Atlas B. And go through these, especially B3. This has a lot of regions. You're going to see pictures of this woman. You're going to see, make sure you know everything that's labeled here. You have to be familiar with. Main superficial anatomy. You have to be comfortable with the main organs. Where's the liver? Where's the intestines? Where's the pancreas? Where's the pancreas? Where are the kidneys? You have to know just main organs and main superficial muscles. Make sure you feel comfortable with this. You will see this. You will see these pictures on the lab. And then I would pay a little bit closer attention to superficial anatomy here, especially of the lower extremity. Sometimes what'll pop up are pictures of the hand. Sometimes what pops up is the leg, like this, especially here. Like, what is some of this anatomy here superficially? Be comfortable with this. Be comfortable with these. Right? This is all superficial anatomy, nothing deep, but you do have to kind of know what's here. Be comfortable with naming the toes and the arches. So you'll probably see a lot of the lower extremity that pops up. I've seen it pop up in the past. And the reason why I say I've seen it pop up is they're test banks. So I really don't have much control as to what the computer decides for that day when your quiz opens up that you will see. All I know is a lot of these pictures end up popping up there, okay? So you want to spend some time on Atlas A, Atlas B, and that comes from the textbook in Saladin, okay? And you know how to find that. Okay. All right, let's go back in here in the Connect again to just review. Your quizzes are taken here, but when are you going to do the quiz? You don't want to do it right away. You have to review the information. So what are you going to review? The APR, that's the cadaver dissection tool, and you're going to review Saladin, the ebook, the Atlas A and B. Okay? All right. I think that pretty much covers some of the basics for week 1. Let me just see if there was anything else. Let's go back into week 1 again. Let's just scroll down. I think what's left is the discussion board. We did the readings, we did the videos, we did the McGraw Connect. This is how you connect to your lab. That's how you're going to register, read the directions. Here's where you're going to take your lecture exam. Here's your extra credit weekly summary. And wait, where is that? That's your weekly summary. Where's the discussion board? How did I miss that? Ah, it's all the way down at the bottom. Week 1 discussion. So again, how to do it is down here. You always want to put the research topic number, the name. If you're responding to a classmate, address your classmate by their name. Hi, Danielle, I read your post about, I found this interesting and it made me think this. Okay, so now your response doesn't have to open up with research. Your response can open up with your critical thinking. Make sure you bold it and label the topic critical thinking. And then underneath it, you could support some of that with some research. You would then say research and put your research component to it. It doesn't always have to be research and then your critical thinking about it. It could be your thoughts, critical thinking, and then you found something to support that. It could work both ways. So when you click on the rubric, and then you can click on the topics. When you click on the topics, let's see if we can get this to open up. It should. There we go. So these are, let's see, how many topics? 39 topics. So maybe someone's going to take homeostasis and feedback loops. So this is where you're going to be talking about what is this dynamic state of balance and positive and negative feedback loops, what they are, and give some classical examples. Someone may decide the scientific method. Some may teach us about directional terms and give us some examples. Some may talk about anatomical position, the planes, the sections, the cavities, right? So now you're going to be using each other's posts and each other's work to teach you these. That's why you don't want to wait till Sunday. You want to work together as a team, and hopefully people respond and your classmates respond early to cover this. Maybe someone's going to talk about the anatomical quadrants, which I'll probably mention in this evening's lecture. Someone's going to talk about the atom and what is neutrons and electrons and protons and discuss that. What are electron shells? Maybe someone's going to talk about ions and isotopes. Someone's going to cover, let's bond. Well, how does bonding happen? Some of you are going to talk about maybe covalent bonds or ionic bonding or the octet rule and how that works. The importance of water, the hydrogen bond, and some of the properties of water. What is a solvent? What is a solute? What are colloids? What is a suspension? So some pretty neat things about mixtures. Some of you may talk about the pH scale and explain about acids and bases. Energy, what is kinetic energy? What is potential? Make it relevant to us. Chemical reactions, super important in order to understand before you get into proteins and carbohydrates and fats, is how things react in the body. Chemical reactions. The synthesis means to make something, to decompose, decomposition, to break down, exchange and oxidation reactions. Metabolism, catabolism and anabolism, the breaking down and building up. Exergonic and endergonic, which one releases energy and which ones take energy. Carbs, proteins, fats, amino acids, nucleotides. These are all involved chemistry. Now, these are all relevant in healthcare. This is all relevant to building up body tissues. These are all relevant even when we talk about the cell. The cell, especially the cell and the cell membrane, is made up of carbs, protein, fat. Talk about DNA, RNA, you have to discuss nucleotides. Adenosine triphosphate, energy currency of the body. What is the difference between DNA and RNA, which is deoxyribose nucleic acid and ribose nucleic acid? The cell theory, great topic. The cell size and its shape. The plasma membrane, which is the cell membrane. This is an awesome topic too, structure and function. Diffusion, how things cross through a membrane. Different types of diffusion. Osmosis versus tonicity. The effect on cells. When something absorbs too much water or loses water, how cells can increase and decrease in size, and what happens. Passive versus active transport. Exocytosis versus endocytosis. Cell eating and cell drinking. Pretty neat stuff. How a cell can get rid of things or take in things. The different organelles that are found in the cell, the different types and their functions. You're going to see that on your exam for sure. DNA structure and function, RNA structure and function in 3 different types. DNA versus RNA, protein synthesis. Step number 1, the translation. Pre-messenger RNA. Maybe someone wants to relate this to COVID or a COVID vaccine, messenger RNA vaccine. Who knows? Maybe you'll get creative with it. The cell cycle. When does DNA replicate? Mitosis, which is cell division. Genes. That's a great topic. The function in general terms like alleles. A locus. Homozygous. Maybe someone wants to talk about genetic flaws and SNPs, like single nuclear polymorphisms like MTHFR or trisomy 21, who knows. Chromosomes and heredity, all great topics. I just kind of briefly threw some things out there that you may want to research, or it may give you some other ideas. Okay, let's take a look at some of this information on anatomy and physiology. How about that? Because that's what we're here to learn about. So AMP, anatomy and physiology. Here you have this woman here that is in, let me go back here. She is in what we call anatomical position, which is standing erect, feet on the floor, and notice the palms are facing anterior. There's the word anterior, which means they're facing forward. We are looking at her from anterior. What we don't see is her posterior. The posterior is everything on the back, anterior is everything in the front. The hands are also considered to be in a supinated position, which are the palms facing forward. You can see the eyes, you can see the toes, but you don't see the back of the hands, right? You don't see the back of the hands because the back of the hands are facing backwards, which is posterior. When we talk about AMP, anatomy and physiology, anatomy is dealing with the structure, human structure. Physiology is more of human function. So we can look at human structure by visual inspection or observation. We could see things with the naked eye, but there are certain things that we need microscope to look at. So we have things we could see macroscopically and things that we could see microscopically. How else can we look at anatomy? How about looking at an X-ray? Well, you can see the anatomy of the bones, the skull, the ribs, the spinal column, all the upper and lower extremity. We could do an MRI. We could see the brain. We could see the spinal cord. We could do CAT scans, right? So this is all ways of looking at human structure. Physiology is the study of human function. Structure determines function. And this is what we're talking about. Saladin's book is Form and Function. Form is anatomy, function is physiology. So we can look at things as gross anatomy or macroscopic anatomy. And these are things, as I said, you can see visibly with the naked eye. You can see surface anatomy, which is the exterior features. When you're looking at Atlas B and Atlas A, you're looking at a lot of superficial anatomy. These are the external or exterior features. Superficial means close to the surface. Deep, right? You could be superficial or we could be deep, is obviously much deeper to that. Regional anatomy is the body areas. Like maybe someone is a shoulder specialist, only dealing with the shoulder region, like a shoulder orthopedist, or someone is a hip orthopedist. Then there's systemic anatomy. Well, maybe I am a cardiac surgeon. I just deal with the heart. Or I'm a cardiovascular surgeon. Now I deal with the heart and the blood vessels. There's developmental anatomy, which deals with everything from sperm and egg coming together at the time of conception to death. And then there's clinical anatomy. There are many anatomy books for healthcare professionals. A biggie is by Snell. That's been a popular one for many, many years, which is clinical anatomy. Now you have to know normal structure to be able to recognize abnormal structure. When you have normal structure, you're going to have normal function. When you have abnormal structure, you're going to have abnormal function. Abnormal function is what we call pathology or pathophysiology. That is the body not working at ease, but working at dis-ease, right? You have ease and dis-ease. When we look at microscopic anatomy, things you cannot see with the naked eye, now we look at the cell. Whenever you see that CYT in the root of the word, cyte means cell. So cytology is the study of cells. You may hear words through your reading like myocyte, cardiomyocyte, hepatocyte, chondrocyte, osteocyte. They just mean cell every time you see the word. So hepatocyte, like hepatitis, inflammation of the liver, hepatocyte is now a liver cell. Osteocyte, osteology, osteo is bone. Osteocyte is what type of cell? Now we're talking about a bone cell. Chondro is cartilage. Chondrocyte is a cartilage cell. All right, histology, when cells come together, they make tissues. Histology is the study of tissues. So there's cell physiology, there's organ physiology, there's systemic physiology, and then there's pathological physiology. I'm going to show you in just a minute how when cells come together, they make tissues, and then tissues make organs, and then organs make systems, and all the 11 systems that come together, like the cardiovascular system, the immune system, the neural system, endocrine system, respiratory system, renal system, right? All these systems come together and they make the organism. That's where we have pathological physiology. So here, chemicals, we talk about chemistry, we're talking about the molecular level, like atoms, right? Ions and anions and carbons and hydrogens and oxygens and nitrogen. So all of these chemicals come together and they make cells. And then a group of cells that have similar structure and function come together, and then they create tissues. And then a bunch of tissues come together of similar structure and function and make an organ. And then a group of organs come together and then they make a system. And then we have 11 systems that come together and make the organism, the crowning creation of all. So your atoms come together and your protein molecules and protein filaments. And eventually when these things come together, they make a cell. In this case, it is a heart muscle cell or a cardiomyocyte. I'm just giving you an example. And then these cells come together and they make tissues. Now, when you cover tissues, we're going to learn that there's 4 basic types of tissues in the body. There's epithelial tissue, there's connective tissue, there is muscle tissue, and then there's neural tissue. Again, 4 types of tissues: epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and neural tissue. When you cover tissues, you'll go over that. I also want to mention, I do have a YouTube channel. So for some of you that want to review some of my past recordings on this, I also have lots of videos that explain some physiology. So if you want to find my YouTube channel, you'll want to subscribe, because I do updates just about every week. Like, for example, this video that I cover this evening, I'm going to put it on my YouTube channel, and then I can send you the link and you can view it. So the YouTube channel is Nutrition Chiro Doc. Nutrition Chiro Doc. You know how to spell nutrition? Then it's Chiro, C-H-I-R-O, Doc, D-O-C. It's one word, Nutrition Chiro Doc, and I have many, many videos, articles, on lectures. Just do a search, you'll find it, and there'll be something relevant for you to help you with some of this material. Okay, so now we have those 4 types of tissues, right? Epithelial, connective, muscle, and nerve. They come together, and tissues come together to form organs. In this case, the heart cells became the heart tissue. The heart tissues created the heart, and now the heart and the blood vessels form the cardiovascular system, one of the 11 systems. Then you have the reproductive, the respiratory, the immune, the neural, the endocrine, right? The integumentary system, which is the skin, hair, and nails. And then we have the organism, the crowning creation of all. So let's take a look at these 11 systems. You should be familiar with some of their major parts, some of their major functions. We're going to cover some in our course. So we will be looking at the integumentary system, which is skin, hair, and nails. You want to be focusing on the epidermis and the dermis and the different layers of the epidermis. There's 5 microscopic layers. And then the dermis and the 2 major layers, and all the different things that could be found within skin that you'll find in the lab section as well as the lecture section. So integumentary is skin, hair, nails, sweat glands. They're going to protect us against the environmental hazards. Your skin is your first line of defense. That's what it's referred to as, your first line of defense. Your skin protects you much like a cell membrane or plasma membrane protects a cell. If there is a lesion, or let's say past the first, past the second, maybe a 3rd degree burn, all of a sudden mucus and serous membranes are exposed. Now you have bacteria and viruses that can attack the human body. That's not good, because then you can get septicemia, which is really septic shock. You get bacterial overgrowth that runs systemically through your blood. Not a good thing. Okay. So the integumentary system also helps to regulate your body temperature. We know that your sweat pores can open and you can sweat to cool you off. Although you feel hot when you're sweating, you're actually cooling yourself off. And the skin provides sensory information. You know, if there's ever an insect or a mosquito on your hand, you can slap it, right? You can sense that it's there. Then we have the skeletal system. The skeletal system is divided into what we see centrally here, which is the axial skeleton, which is the skull and the spine and the sacrum and coccyx. And we have the ribs and the sternum, part of that. And we have the pelvis, part of that, right? So this is all in the center. That's called the axial skeleton. And then we have the appendicular skeleton. The appendages is the upper extremity and the lower extremity, okay? The bones serve a major important function for us. The bones are a place where muscles can attach. But bones are also a reservoir, a bank, a place to store nutrients. We're going to store calcium there. Maybe we're going to store iron there. right? The whole idea of eating is eating food, breaking it down, using it for energy, and whatever is excessive, you can excrete through a bowel movement or urination. What the body needs to store, it can put in the bank. It can put into these bones. The bones are also a place where we can make red blood cells called erythrocytes. So the production of red blood cells is called erythrocytosis, producing red blood cells, erythrocytosis. And we can also make white blood cells there. You've heard of T cells and B cells. Well, B comes from bone marrow. So that's produced in the bone marrow, which is in the medullary cavity of bone. When you look at bones, you'll also learn about different types of bones and classifications of bones, and short bones and long bones and flat bones and irregular bones. Bones is a big topic, all right? Now we have muscles, and muscles attach to bones. And when muscles contract, contract means to produce tension, bones move. Muscles can also generate heat. I happen to be in the Northeast. It's freezing here. We just had lots of snow. We've had at least, I don't know, 14 to 15 inches in the last few days. So if I go out in my shorts and I go out in a t-shirt, I could probably be okay for about 5 minutes. And then what happens? All of a sudden, my shoulders go up and my hands shake and my jaws are like this, right? Muscles contract and they generate heat. You know this because if you go to the gym and you exercise, muscles are contracting, they generate heat, and then you sweat. We know that if you have a fever, you're like, oh, I got to get under the covers. I'm so cold. I'm so cold. Your body is trying to raise its body temperature. Sometimes the hypothalamus in the brain can't increase the body temperature enough, so your muscles go into contraction to generate more heat, and that heat acts as a generator. Not a generator, like an incinerator, to help burn and destroy bacteria and viruses, because they love to multiply at 97.6 to 98.6 degrees, but you put them under a lot of stress and burn them up and incinerate them at 104, 105, 106 degrees. This comes up all the time. I mean, I have 3 children myself, and I have had them have 104, 105 degree fever. I just monitor them and I make sure that they're okay. But in terms of using aspirin and Tylenol, as long as my kids could sleep, we never did anything. We just monitored them. And if I were to give anything to bring down body temperature, it was just to bring it from maybe 105 to 104. And that will be enough to get the kids comfortable to sleep. And then they sweat it out at night, and then they're brand new the next day. And everyone's afraid of brain cells. Oh my God, the brain cells are going to die. Brain cells die at about 107.9 degrees. So relax. The body knows what it's doing. It's brilliant. Parents get scared, I understand. They get nervous when they see a febrile seizure where muscles contract, the eyes roll back to the back of the head, and they go into a febrile seizure, again, to generate heat. Pretty amazing how the body does that. So the muscles generate heat. They help us locomote, to move around, and they also protect, like if you look at the abdominal muscles, they protect the abdominal organs, right? So they're for protection as well. The neural system. I like the word neural. I don't use the word nervous. I don't like to be nervous. So the brain, the spinal cord, that is considered the central neural system because it's central. Brain and spinal cord is the CNS, or central neural system. Everything else that we see in the periphery is called the peripheral neural system. Central neural system is brain and spinal cord. Anything coming off the brain, like cranial nerves, anything coming off the spinal cord, spinal nerves, those are all part of the peripheral neural system. The whole idea of the neural system, it's like a computer. Okay, it takes in information, it processes the information, and then it does something with that information. Sensory information comes in, there's a processing of that information, and then motor information goes out. That's how the neural system works. We'll be covering the endocrine system. I believe we covered that week 4. Endocrine and reproductive, there's some overlap, but you really need to know the names of these organs. The pituitary gland is up in the brain. The pancreas is over here that regulates blood sugar and produces a lot of digestive enzymes for the duodenum. The gonads, well, the gonads are the testes. Whoops, let's go back. The gonads are the testes and the ovaries. Yes, they're part of the reproductive system, but they also produce hormones like testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. The thyroid gland in the throat for thyroxine and T3, triiodothyronine, and calcitonin, which helps to regulate calcium balance, right? A lot of people don't think the thyroid is important for bones, but the thyroid and what's behind it, called the parathyroid, they're going to regulate calcium balance. They work together but antagonistically. If your blood calcium is too high or too low, this is where the thyroid and parathyroid come into play. Then we can't forget the adrenal glands. Well, in the word adrenal is renal. Renal is the kidney. Adrenal is adding something to the kidney, which is the suprarenal, aka adrenal gland. Adrenaline, right? Adrenal. Epinephrine and norepinephrine for your sympathetic neural system, which is your fight or flight response, which increases your heart rate, makes your pupils dilate, right? Just get out of danger's way, that type of thing. So the endocrine system is involved in producing hormones. These hormones are designed to control and coordinate functional long-term changes throughout the body. The cardiovascular system is the heart, the arteries, the veins, the lymphatic vessels, and they are pretty much designed to distribute red blood cells, white blood cells, water, nutrients, waste products, bring in oxygen, excrete and get rid of carbon dioxide, and also involved in distributing heat throughout the body, right? Body temperature, blood is about 100 degrees in temperature. And that's why when you have an injury, like if you roll your ankle or sprain your ankle, it's red, hot, and swollen, because when your body releases histamine, histamine is a vasodilator. It means it dilates and opens up. Vaso is vessels, your blood vessels. Histamine is a vasodilator. Those blood vessels open, brings lots of blood to that area. It brings lots of blood to the area to flush away debris and bring in more nutrients. That's why it's hot, 100 degrees is blood, swollen. We got all that blood bringing nutrients there and trying to get rid of the waste products. That's inflammation, right? Lymphatics, this is like a parallel circulatory system. It's really designed to pull out debris from the circulatory system. Some of the major organs of the lymphatics, in the throat, you have your tonsils. Over here in the upper left quadrant, somewhere back here, is the spleen. Up here in the chest, near the heart, up here is your thymus. And you have all these green structures. These are all lymphatic vessels. And then there's these swollen nodules called lymph nodes. Lymph nodes. You have lymph nodes in the axilla, in the armpit. Women have it around the breast tissue. You have lymph nodes up near the SCM, the sternocleidomastoid, in front of the SCM, behind the SCM, in front of the ear, behind the ear, all along the upper arm, in the groin. Lymph nodes are everywhere. This is how a lot of diseases can spread. They can metastasize, meaning spread and become malignant, through the lymph, where it could spread from the lungs to the breast, or the breast to the lungs, or the lungs to the liver, or the liver to the brain. That's how these things metastasize. The respiratory tract, right? There's an upper respiratory tract and a lower respiratory tract. Some people have an upper respiratory tract infection or a lower respiratory tract infection. The major organs are the nasal cavity, the sinuses, the larynx, the trachea, the bronchi, and then deep, you have the lungs and the alveoli. The alveoli is where the capillary system is, where the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide take place. The respiratory system, really its primary function is take in oxygen. The oxygen has got to find a way to oxygenate the red blood cells. And the red blood cells, when they have oxygen, they're red. When they're deoxygenated, that's what the veins look blue, right? Arteries are red, veins are blue. Think of the term cyanosis, cyano, right? On a printer, when you get that blue ink, it's cyano. But when, God forbid, a baby drowns, they see the lips, the ears, the fingernails, they're blue. They say they're cyanotic. They're blue due to the lack of oxygen, cyanosis. So take in oxygen and to blow out carbon dioxide. The GI tract. GI is gastrointestinal tract, your digestive tract. Most of the mechanical digestion starts in the mouth, and then you chew your food. It's called bolus when it's in the mouth. You break it down, it goes down the esophagus, and then it goes into the stomach. Now you have all these digestive enzymes breaking it down. It's called chyme. And then you have the pancreas and the liver and the gallbladder. These are all accessory organs that are designed to break down the food even more. And then it's in your intestines. You have the small intestine and the large intestine. The small intestine is the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. Those are the three parts of the duodenum. And then the large intestine is also known as the colon. There's the ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon, and then the rectum and anus. Okay. Primary job of the GI tract is to absorb nutrients. We want to absorb those nutrients and get them into our cells and tissues so we can have normal physiology. Before, when I talked about respiratory system, and I said we want to get the red blood cells to carry oxygen, we need to bring the oxygen into the cells. And the cells have a mitochondria. And the mitochondria need the oxygen to produce ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate. Same thing, we need to eat food to break down the carbohydrates, the proteins, the fats, and from that we can get ATP because the oxygen is going to be utilized to oxidize glucose, to break it down to get ATP, to get energy. The urinary system, the kidneys, the ureters, the urinary bladder, the urethra, the urinary tract, along with the liver, these are involved in detoxification. All the blood goes to the liver and gets filtered, and all the blood goes through the kidneys to get filtered. And since all the blood is going to the kidneys make the perfect organ to not just filter blood, but to assess it. Like, what's the blood pressure like? Right? Or, do I have enough oxygen? And then the kidneys can make hormones to change pressure, blood pressure, and to change oxygen levels. Pretty neat how the kidneys do that. The kidneys also make vitamin D. It's an integral part, along with the skin and the liver, to make vitamin D. The male reproductive, you'll be hearing about these. I believe it is the 4th week. Testes, epididymis, the ductus deferens, aka vas deferens. When a male gets a vasectomy, it's the vas deferens that's being clipped. There's the seminal vesicle, prostate gland, penis, and scrotum. The main function is to produce sperm and hormones like testosterone, as well as sexual intercourse. For the female, it's the ovaries, the ovarian tubes, aka uterine tubes, the uterus, vagina, labia, clitoris, and mammary glands. The ovary is going to produce the oocyte, which is the primary sex cell. And then many hormones are going to be produced by the ovaries, and even the placenta when a woman gets pregnant, and the embryo to help support the pregnancy. The breasts are for the nourishment of the newborn Again, there are many hormones that act on the breast tissue to help with lactation. One of them is called prolactin, and of course, sexual intercourse. In terms of superficial anatomy, you need to know anatomical position, hands at the sides, palms facing forward. Supine is lying on your spine. Supine is lying on your spine face up, whereas prone is lying on your bone face down, your bone being your nose. Supine is on your spine, prone is lying face down. Supine and prone is also used with your hands. When you're supine, you can hold soup. You can hold soup in a supine position. But if you're prone to spilling it, oops, right? When you're prone to spilling it, your hands turn over and rotate down. So supine is holding the soup. Prone is when you're prone to spilling it when the hands rotate down. We're going to look at some anatomical regions and quadrants. We're going to go through some anatomical reference terminology now. These regions are also located in your Atlas A and Atlas B, which is found in the Saladin ebook. Make sure you go through them. You will see these on the lab portion as well. So you need to know that the forehead is called the frontal region. The chin is called the mental region. There are holes here called mental foramen. So the chin is called mental. The cheek is called buccal. There's a muscle here called a buccinator. Like if you were to blow into a trumpet and your cheeks puff out, that's the buccinator. Otic is ear. Ocular or orbit refers to the eye. Cephalic refers to the head. Cephalic is the entire head. There's a term in healthcare, we call it cephalgia. Anytime you hear the word algia, A-L-G-I-A, at the end of a word, it means pain. So if you have arthralgia, it's joint pain. If you have myalgia, like fibromyalgia, it's muscle pain. If you have neuralgia, it's nerve pain. If you have cephalgia, it's a headache. That's what it is. Okay, oral is mouth, mental is chin. Over here is the sternocleidomastoid, SCM muscle, sterno for sternum, cleido for clavicle, and then mastoid is the little bump that you can feel just in front of the ear off the base of the occiput. That's called your mastoid process. So sternocleidomastoid. We have the chest, which is called the thorax. The armpit is the axilla or axillary region, where you have axillary lymph nodes. You have the mammary duct, which is the breast. There's also mammary lymph nodes. The arm is the brachial or brachium. You've heard of the biceps brachii or brachialis. The elbow, the crease in front of the elbow, is called antecubital. The belly button is umbilical. Then you have the abdomen or the abdominal region. All of this in the center, they call this the trunk. That's the trunk. Here is the antebrachium, which is the forearm. The wrist is called the carpals. You've heard of carpal tunnel syndrome. Well, there are 8 carpal bones here. The palm is called palmar, and the digits are called phalanges. Whether it's the digits of the hand or whether it's the digits of the toes, the feet, they're still called phalanges. What's different is what we call the thumb versus the great toe. The thumb is called pollex or pollicus, and the great toe is called hallux or hallucus. Carpals are in the hand, tarsals are in the foot. Just remember tarsals, toes, and then you can remember carpals when you drive a car, carpals, the wrist. Inguinal, that's where the inguinal ligament is. The pubic, for the pubic bone. We know there's pubic hair as well. Femoral is the thigh. Crural is the leg. And then pedal, like pedal, that's for the foot. And again, hallux and phalanges. In the palm, it was palmar and pollicis. Hallux is the great toe, phalanges are the other toes. Phalanges are the fingers, pollicis or pollex with the palm for the thumb. Here's cephalic, which is the head, different than the neck. The neck is the cervical region. And we know we have 7 cervical vertebrae, C1 to C7. Those are cervical. The acromion is the highest part of the shoulder. The back is called dorsum or dorsal. Here's your upper limb. And the back of the elbow, if your elbows are leaning on your desk, it's called the olecranon process or an olecranal. We have the gluteal region, which is where your gluteal muscles are, gluteus medius, minimus, and maximus. We have the back of the knee, which is the popliteal region. The calf is called the sural. The heel is called the calcaneal. And then the underneath surface of the foot is called the plantar surface, or the sole of the foot. Okay, if you're more linear, again, here are the words, and then here is the regions that go along with it. Same thing here. Here are the structures, the terms that you heard me use, and then what part of the body they symbolize. Other words to be familiar with: superior and inferior, they're opposite. Anterior and posterior, they're opposite. Medial and lateral, they're opposite. Superior is above, inferior is below, anterior is the front, posterior is the back. Medial is towards the midline of the body, and if you're moving away from the midline of the body, we say we're moving laterally. And I'll show you what those look like on a picture. Proximal and distal, they're opposites. Superficial and deep, they're opposites. Contralateral and ipsilateral, they're opposites. When we're talking about bones or parts of the body in general, there's the part that's closest to the trunk, which is proximal. And if you're moving further away from that, we're moving distal. Superficial is towards the body surface, and if we're moving more internal, it's deep. Contralateral and ipsilateral. If I said patient hurt their right shoulder and their ipsilateral carpal region, it means the right shoulder and the right wrist. If I said patient tripped, sprained their right ankle, but fractured the contralateral patella or kneecap, it means they sprained their right ankle, but the contralateral means the left knee, the opposite side. So here's a great picture that shows you proximal and distal. Again, proximal is closer to the trunk, distal is further away. If we're looking at the belly button and we're moving away from the body, that's lateral. If we're starting at the pollicis or the first digit and we're moving to the 5th digit or the pinky, I'm moving medially. If I'm moving from here to the belly button, it's medial. If we're going from the belly button outward, it's lateral. Really important terminology. Proximal and distal apply to the extremities. When we're talking about the body as a whole, it's superior and inferior. Again, keep in mind when we're looking at anatomical position, this is the left and this is the right. Even though this is your reading left as we're looking at the person, this is still her right shoulder, her right ear. Keep that in mind, anatomical position. Ventral or anterior is the front of the body. When you move to the posterior, you're moving to the back or dorsal. So anterior and posterior, aka ventral and dorsal. Just look at the arrows and it shows you the direction that you're moving. If you're moving towards the cranium, that's cranially. If you're moving towards the tail, it's caudally. It's important to know quadrants versus the 9 regions. So again, remember this is the anatomical position. So this is the right upper quadrant, right lower quadrant, left upper quadrant, left lower quadrant. Why is this important? It's important because patient comes in with right lower quadrant pain. Now, that's what it would say on the paperwork. And we have to go, well, what do we have here in the right lower quadrant? When I palpate or feel, that's what palpate means, when I feel this area, the patient grimaces and pulls away from the pain. Pain on a scale of 1 to 10, they were a 10.5. we'd think maybe there's an inflamed appendix over here. Okay, so you have to keep in mind what deeper structures are found in those right upper quadrant, right lower quadrant, left upper quadrant, left lower quadrant. I think in the textbook, there may be a mistake in one of the labeling of it. I think you'll find it. The publisher didn't make the correction yet. But right upper quadrant, right lower, left upper, left lower, and just be familiar with what main organs are there, right? The gallbladder and liver, primarily in the right upper quadrant. You have the appendix in the right lower quadrant. Large portion of the intestines are really in all of these, right? But the left lower quadrant probably has the most. This gives you the names of the organs that you can find here, so you can just review this on your own time. I don't have to read them to you. But in addition to the 4 quadrants, there are 9 regions, and you're going to see these pop up on the lab exam. So you need to know their names. If you start at the belly button, that's the umbilical region. Above it is epigastric, above the stomach. Below it is hypogastric, below. So umbilical region, epi means above, hypo means under, like hypoactive thyroid and underactive thyroid. So epigastric, hypogastric. Sometimes the hypogastric is called the pubic region. Then let's go to the inguinal ligament. So you have the left inguinal region, the right inguinal region. Then in the lower back is the lumbar region, right? You've got 5 lumbar vertebrae, L1 to L5. So there's the right lumbar region, left lumbar region, and then near the ribs, you have the hypochondriac region, the left hypochondriac and right hypochondriac. So you should be familiar with the names, be able to identify them. And then, of course, there are organs that fall within them. Okay, now for the most part, we use the quadrants, not so much the regions. But be familiar with the regions, be familiar with the names of them for sure. This is just the overlap of the blue line, which is the quadrants, and then the red tic-tac-toe, those are the 9 regions. Again, just to review, you can review some of the basic terminology again, and we're going to be finishing up here with planes, because that will show up on your exam as well. Planes are important because we can take different slices of the body, whether it's an MRI or a CAT scan, and try and get the full dimensions of what's happening inside the body. If there's a tumor and we want to look at, is it invading other tissues, you don't just look at it from head on. You may have to look at it from left to right, front to back, and top to bottom. So we have different planes to look at things. If we look at things from this plane, right, going from front to back, dividing the body into a left and right half, that's called the sagittal plane, looking at someone from left to right. If we cut someone in half this way, dividing their body into a front half and back half, like here, that's the frontal, aka coronal plane. If we cut the body in half, looking at a bird's eye view, looking straight down on it, that's called a transverse plane. So we can look at someone's brain from the sagittal view, looking at it from left to right. Here's the nose, here's the tongue, here's the cerebellum, here's the cerebrum, here's the atlas vertebrae, here's the medulla oblongata and the pons. These are some muscles behind the skull. Here's the occipital lobe. So this is the sagittal view. This is the frontal or the coronal view, looking at it from back to front. Here are the ears. Here are some muscles. Here's the brain, the cerebrum. And then we can look at a bird's eye view looking down on it. This is the transverse plane. This is great view to look at the cerebral spinal fluid in the ventricles. These are the lateral ventricles of the brain, one in each hemisphere of the brain. So you should be familiar with not just sagittal, but also there is the mid-sagittal. So mid-sagittal is right down the center of the body, And then sagittal separates any body part into a right and left half. So you should be familiar with those. There are certain cavities that you should be familiar with. And if we look at this right here, we see number one on top, there's a thoracic cavity. And on the bottom, abdominal pelvic cavity. And this muscle right here, which is the diaphragm, that's a respiratory muscle, it helps us breathe, separates the thoracic cavity from the abdominal pelvic cavity. Now, within the thoracic cavity, there's a pleural cavity, which houses the lungs, pericardial, cardia, heart, which houses the heart. So pleural is with the lungs, pericardial is with the heart. Then below the diaphragm is the abdominal pelvic cavity. Primarily abdominal and pelvic. Abdominal for the abdominal organs, pelvic cavity for the reproductive organs. And again, another view. Here's the thoracic cavity, here's your lungs, and here's the heart. There's the pleural cavity for the lungs, pericardial cavity for the heart. The mediastinal is a cavity or a chamber in which a lot of the passageways like the trachea and the esophagus, those things travel through the mediastinum. A lot of the heart blood vessels travel through the mediastinum. Okay, so that's up here, the thoracic cavity. When we look at the abdominal pelvic cavity, it's really the abdominal and the pelvic. The abdominal cavity is going to have the abdominal organs. The pelvic cavity is going to have the reproductive. These are all the ventral, part of the ventral cavity, all of this. In terms of this other cavity, that's your cranial cavity and your vertebral cavity. That's for your brain and spinal cord. That's yellow. Now, the other thing I want to stress to you is parietal layer versus visceral layer. We're at the very end here. Parietal layer and visceral layer. When we talked about these cavities before, right? So like here's the pericardial cavity, here's the heart, and then you have lungs. Now the heart comes into contact with a membrane. So let's take a look at, if I put my fist into this balloon, right? This is a balloon, you push your fist into this balloon, there is this membrane here, this layer that comes into contact with my fist. Now, if this was the heart coming into contact with the balloon, this layer, the heart is the viscera, that's the organ. This is the visceral layer. The visceral layer, or visceral pericardium. But then there's the layer on the outer portion that actually touches the other part of the cavity. That's called the parietal pericardium, if it was the heart. So this holds true whether it's the pleural cavity for the lungs, there'll be the visceral pleura, parietal pleura if it was the lungs, and then we'll see it true with the abdominal organs. It doesn't really change. So here's the heart. The heart is in the parietal cavity. Here's the lung. It's in the pleural cavity. And there is the parietal pleura, which is outer part. And then the inner part would be the visceral pleura. There's the visceral pleura and then a parietal pleura. With the abdominal organs, there's a parietal peritoneum and a visceral peritoneum. The concept is the same. If it's the layer that touches the organ, it's the visceral. And if it's the outer part, it's the parietal. That's the take-home message. Peritoneum always refers to all of your digestive organs. Okay? All right. So let me stop the recording here, and I will take any questions you may have. Give me 1 minute to stop that.